Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Yesterday we looked at an image from Lucy, who's an advanced photographer from Texas, and we're going to look at one more of her beautiful images from my Spirit of Whidbey Island workshop. Just took place on Whidbey Island in Puget Sound. Lucy shot this with a Canon Rebel 70 to 300 f4 zoom. The effective focal length here is 110 millimeters, and Lucy's exposure trio of information is ISO 100 f22 and a third of a second. One of the things that I like about this image is the beautiful combination of motion being implied in some areas of the water, and then the feeling of a lot of texture, and almost as if motion is being stopped in other areas of the image. And so I'm really enjoying what a third of a second is doing here, and I just really encourage you as a takeaway from the video today that when you're shooting shots that involve water, to allow yourself to play with a range of shutter speeds to see what's happening in terms of combinations of energies. And when water is moving sort of average surf action, it might be really cool to play anywhere from a 15th all the way down to a second and see what's happening sort of in that range. The other thing that I wanted to mention here is Lucy has stopped down to f22 to get to the shutter speed. She's at her lowest ISO here, and we may be starting to push towards some diffraction, which would cause an overall loss of sharpness. No problem in the water because we're implying some motion there to begin with, but it might cause a loss of sharpness on the rocks, although it doesn't look like it here. So diffraction is relative to your lens, and then relative to your working apertures is something where you need to do a test. If in fact we're getting diffraction here, then we might want to use something like neutral density or maybe a polarizer to slow the shutter speed down instead of stopping down quite so far here. The assignment for this particular shot was the idea of rhythm or repetition. So repeating a visual design motif in different areas of the image, and Lucy's done a really beautiful job of showing a simple rhythm here. Very simple but powerful repetition of the two areas of rocks playing on one of the major diagonals, and then two areas of water that are almost the same shape, with this diagonal kind of connecting in the middle. Really beautiful too how you get a repetition of the two highlight areas. Really powerful quality of light here. You see the light is creating this really beautiful feeling of separation of the water that's hitting the rock and then spraying off of the rock, and that's repeating down in here. The light is also doing an absolutely fantastic job of creating an accent or a kicker light effect on the top of these rocks, and so the light here is really creating a very strong feeling of dimension. Not only is the light beautiful from a directional standpoint, it's beautiful from a color standpoint. This is very near the end of the day. The light is shining warm, and where the light is hitting, very, very sort of russet or orange, and then the rest of the sky is clear, and that's the blue part of the sky, and so that's the light source for the shadow. So we're getting a really beautiful combination here, blue and orange, really powerful complementary color pair. So many things to like here. I mean, one of the things I really enjoy is just how much texture and detail there is in just this one section of sort of the ocean pouring over the rocks here. This was shot on a scene where it's just so tempting to only pay attention to just sort of the grandiosity of the overall shot. And I really like the way Lucy, even though we're having a beautiful sunset at this point in time, is just coming in with a long lens and working just a detail in a small area of the scene. I wanted to make a simple change to this image today, just talk about a very simple concept if we want to bring subjects forward. If we're trying to create an illusion of depth, or we want a subject to feel like it's moving forward and the area around it is receding, then we can just use the idea of value. The difference between light and dark is what creates the illusion of form and two-dimensional structure of our photographs. And a lot of times beginning photographers, when they're editing, if they want to accentuate, let's say, an area like this, they might work on the area itself. They might think, well, what if I just saturate that? What if I add more red to that? What if I add more color? But another way of thinking about editing is how we can affect a subject by changing the area around it. And so what I want to do here is copy the background. let's say that in fact we did want to make these areas of the image pop even more, and I'd like to do that. I'd like to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, these rocks are backlit. They're very, very dark rocks to begin with, and they start to take on an enormous amount of visual weight, and also the contrast of the edge of the rocks. And then there's a lot of blue here in the shadows. To me, one of the most exciting parts of the image, if not the main subject, is this area right here where the water is hitting and then spraying back out. But to me right now it's getting a little bit overwhelmed by the mass and the heavy weight of the rocks and all of the blue. And so if I wanted to make this more rich, you could think, well, if I darken an area it gets more saturated. But if I overall darken, then that adds more weight to the rocks that were already dark and actually more weight to the blue. It doesn't feel like those areas are coming forward anymore. But what I can do is darken around those areas. And I can darken in a way where I'm paying attention to the structure of the rest of the shot. And that's another potential big takeaway from the video today. If I want to come in and I want to edit this area around this and to make it dark, I'd like to look at the structure that exists in that area and then work to make a shape that could rhyme dominant structure that's already happening in the image. And in fact, the assignment here was rhythm. The truth of the matter is, in my style, because I'm a photographer who the vast majority of the time I'm pushing towards a traditional feeling in my photography. By that I mean I like to photograph things that I find to be beautiful and then show them in a way to the viewer where there's visual unity or visual balance or visual closure. A really straightforward way to do that is to repeat themes that can unify all areas. So I'm not just going to come in and darken around this to make it come forward. I want to look at the potential of darkening a whole shape that could add even more sort of unity or structure to the image that rhymes. And so when I turn this eyeball on and off, you can see that my darkening around those subjects has also included accentuating shapes that exist either in another area of the image or sort of flows with the energy that's happening in that particular area of the image itself. So here's before and here's after. I've tried to stay off of those spotlight areas and I've tried to darken around them, and then I did come in and I popped the saturation of those two areas of light. And now I feel like the vibrancy of those two spotlight areas that are warm is doing a better job of playing with the heaviness of the rocks and all the blue that was there to begin with. Here's where we started, and here is where we ended up. I would love to hear your feedback about the critique today, and I just want to say a huge thank you to Lucy for being generous enough to share 2 images with us. Lucy is an amazing photographer in her own right, and we're just really fortunate to have Lucy and all the amazing photographers that we had on our Spirit of Whidbey Island workshop. We just had an amazing time there. Very, very grateful to have had that experience, and very grateful to you for being here. I hope to see you again real soon on the Mindful Life.